A big hot topic in the fighting game community is how the genre needs more single-player oriented content to complement the player versus player action. And while this is true, I'm also a firm believer that I think more single-player focused games should have versus mode shoved in them for no reason. So, today we're going to take a quick look at a bunch of video games that are not fighting games, but got some fighting games in them. As long as you let me stretch the definition of what a fighting game is a bit. And there's no better way to start this off with than probably the earliest example of this, Double Dragon on the NES, which has you fight over who gets the girl at the end of a co-op run, but also has a totally separate versus mode where you get to choose between 6 different characters to duke it out. This is obviously a super primitive versus mode, but honestly it's a pretty unique experience for the NES. And don't be surprised that there's actually tech for this. Now to transition from Double Dragon to Dragon Ball, which is a franchise that is primarily made up of fighters in the video game space. But don't worry, because even the rare non-fighting game digital Dragon Ball outing has a super sick hidden fighter in it. Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure is a Game Boy Advance platformer beat-em-up that goes through the entire Dragon Ball story from Pilaf to Demon King Piccolo and is totally worth playing on its own, but becomes even cooler when you find out there's a versus mode with 8 playable characters and Marvel-style combos. The game is incredibly simple with only one attack button and another for specials, but there's also parries and guard breaks, teleport mix-ups, and generally just feels and looks super good. This game is up there as one of the greatest Dragon Ball games for me, and I played this mode a ton as a kid. Next I want to take a look at the hidden versus mode that's found in Mega Man 7 on the Super Nintendo, which can only be accessed by a code. It's a super simple 2-player battle mode that has you choose either Mega Man or Base, and you shoot at each other until someone blows up. To give the characters a little spice though, there are specials like Mega Man's Arrow Slash or Base's Booster Kick, which are done by doing Hadouken and Shoryuken motions respectively. Most interestingly to me though, is that this game was released before the arcade title Mega Man The Power Battle, which basically took this idea and expanded on it. So my hunch is that this was some kind of power battle prototype, but that's just a theory. An awesome coincidence that happened while I was making this video was that a 2-player mode for Super Punch-Out on the Super Nintendo was just found, that lets a second player control any boxer of their choice against first player Little Mac. This has my gears turning, because what if there are other secret 2-player modes in other games that we just haven't found yet? This is a thought that will truly keep me up at night. Alright though. I know what you want from this channel, so let's get weird. The Adventures of Little Ralph is a Japanese-only classic platformer released on the PlayStation 1 in 1999 that is just so good. The gameplay is super solid and a nice challenge, and the sprite art is downright gorgeous. But even cooler than all of that is that this little game becomes a legit fighting game during its boss battles. You see, Ralph was a super cool dude who got transformed into a child to make him weaker, but when he gets his sword he temporarily reverts back to his adult self and learns how to Hadouken and Shoryuken. I just love this transition from cutesy platformer to fighter, with even the controls themselves totally changing to traditional fighting game controls and Ralph having motion inputs for specials. After beating the game, you unlock a versus mode that also lets you play as all the bosses who have unique moves, crazy combos, and even cool mechanics like this character being able to control her air momentum for dumb mix-ups. Little Ralph is definitely a great example of not only a hidden gem, but also the peak example of what this video is striving for. A fighting game that is hidden inside of a non-fighting game. But platformers and fighters aren't too many degrees removed from each other, right? What about a genre known for its, lack of true gameplay and place of storytelling? Well, in the Japanese-only Sega CD point-and-click adventure, Urusei Yatsura, Dear My Friends, based on the titular manga and anime, you could find some video game cartridges hidden around the main character Ataru's house, which can be brought to a video game console to play, and thankfully for us, one of those video game carts happens to be a fighting game. Just as a heads up, while this game was released only in Japan on the Mega CD, I'm actually playing the wonderful PC recreation of the game by Ezekiel 000, which is also translated into English with mouse and keyboard controls, which is perfectly suited for a point and click. Anyways, this little fighter inside of the game is Subspace Fighter Nitro, which is a little janky 2-button fighter starring Urusei characters. Obviously this isn't the deepest fighting game ever, but the novelty of this existing is super cute to me, and I'm sure fans of the series will get a kick out of this, even if it's just for a few minutes. It's a cool distraction, and that's all it needs to be. Keeping on with games where story is the crux of the adventure, let's take a look at Square's almost masterpiece that definitely needs a remake so they can actually tell the story that they wanted to, Xenogears. This game is a grandiose JRPG classic that hits all the hot tropes of late 90s thought-provoking greatness. Damaged main characters that need therapy, heavy religious themes, and giant robots. And thankfully, somewhere along this 50-hour adventure, you could stop what you're doing and battle those giant robots. This mode plays more like Virtuon or Custom Robo than a standard fighter because you battle in an open 3D space. And I mean like really open. Look how far you can go. There are tons of different mechs to choose who all have different moves, and boosting around feels pretty good. But it's a bit simplistic and it'll usually devolve into spamming whatever your best move is. But as simple as it is, I remember playing this a lot when I was a kid, and I always thought it was awesome that the JRPG with the combo battle system also had a fighter side game to mess around with. Also, it has a training mode with frame data. Some major fighting game releases still don't have frame data. God. Now let's take a look at another JRPG that's a Japanese take on Western RPGs. Ah yeah, you see that From Software logo? You know you're in for a treat. This is Shadow Tower, which is a first-person dungeon crawler that's one of the predecessors to the Souls series. This game is esoteric, super brutal, and probably very archaic to most at this point. But I've always liked these kinds of games, and the low poly look and lack of music give Shadow Tower an insane rich and lonely atmosphere. And it also has a versus mode. Yes, years before everyone jokingly called Dark Souls PvP a fighting game, From Software already made a fighter. And in From Software tradition, the versus mode is so overly complicated and dumb that it's kind of charming. You see, there are over 150 monsters in Shadow Tower, and for every one that you kill in the game, you unlock them to play in the versus mode. Now, a lot of these monsters are very basic or can be considered reskins of each other, but that's still a massive roster. To make it even dumber though, once you unlock a monster for versus mode, you only unlock them for your save on a single memory card, which means to play against another opponent, they also have to have a save file with monsters unlocked on a separate memory card. After jumping through several hoops though, you can finally play the Shadow Tower fighting game, which is as beautiful as you could probably imagine. The game plays with tank controls, every monster has different buttons and different amounts of attacks, and obviously there's no semblance of balance between anything. But it's so weird and cool. These monsters have such awesome and gross designs that I can't help but to just love this mode even though it's pretty not good. Because of how bad the balance is, every match feels like it could end in a second, which just makes things so damn stressful and just plain funny. And you know what? This is just a cool idea in general. Bring this back From Software. I want to play these freaks in a fighting game. Please. And finally, let's take a look at the PS2 now, which had so many 3D beat-em-ups with multiplayer fighting game versus modes that honestly, I could make an entire video just about that. But instead, I'm just gonna quickfire talk about some notable ones, starting with
The Bouncer.
Look, I know that this game is just a big meme at this point, but I have super fond memories of this game because this was the first game I ever rented on the PS2, and at the time, Nomura could do no wrong for me. I saw designs like these, and I ate it right up. Also, The Bouncer is made by Dream Factory, who has also made a bunch of cool, interesting fighting games, so I was really excited to play this again and try the versus mode as an adult. And okay, this is boring. It's almost like each fighter is just taking turns attacking, and the hits have no impact whatsoever. But hey, they had 4-player versus mode with the multi-tap running at 60 frames per second in the year 2000, so I gotta give Square some credit here. So the memes were right about the Bouncer. But hey, I've played much worse. And much worse is right here with Enter the Matrix. Now I know people love this story canon action romp through the Matrix universe, but man, I know my mantra is to be positive with fighting games, but it's hard for me to find anything to love in this versus mode, because, well, just take a look at it. The camera is god-awful, and buns legitimately feel just horrible. I have a strong tolerance when it comes to bad games, and honestly, in the fighting game space, I don't think many truly bad fighting games actually exist. But even I had to flush this one down pretty quickly. Now for a movie adaptation that actually shocked me in a good way. Check out the Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith video game, which of course has you hacking and slashing through the plot of the movie, but who cares? I just want to see some Jedis fight. The Versus mode is an open 3D fighter with strings, juggles, and special moves, and you know, it honestly feels alright, and does look kinda epic when characters start dodging and stuff. It has all the prequel era characters you'd probably expect, while even throwing in an OC and Old Man Kenobi in for good measure. But what surprised me was that this game has fostered an online community just for the Versus mode that has a Discord with almost 200 people in it. They're playing matches, posting tech, and this just blows my mind and makes me super happy that a community exists for a mode like this. Also, apparently Grievous is top tier, so this makes the game automatically good in my opinion. Next up is Beatdown, Fist of Vengeance, and man, growing up I remember thinking that this game was really cool. Beatdown is a peak mid-2000s aesthetic game where you run around and fight random dudes to level up and also beat them down so bad that they're forced to join your little underworld hustler party. The Versus mode takes the one-on-one fight straight out of the main game and plays pretty decently, but for whatever reason, I remembered it being way crazier and a lot more fun as a kid. But then, I realized I was getting Beatdown Fist of Vengeance mixed up with Urban Reign, which literally came out a few weeks after Beatdown, and man, Urban Reign is so cool. Urban Reign is a mission-based beat-em-up by Namco that is just so over the top and exaggerated that it oozes fun straight out of the screen. I posted a clip of myself playing this game and just getting my ass beat, and had so many replies just praising this game that I'm ashamed that I always got it confused with Beatdown. And all this greatness applies to the Versus mode too, which is just a lot of fun and lets you do so much crazy stuff. Since this is a Namco game, you also get Paul Phoenix and Martial Law from Tekken as guest characters. And yeah, you can death punch people into oblivion. Urban Reign rules so hard, and now I gotta start shilling this game and run some 4-player matches at locals in the future. And now for the last game we'll be taking a look at. Well, this might feel like kind of a cop-out, cause this is a spin-off title of an actual fighting game series. You know what? When else am I gonna get to gush about this game? Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks might actually be my favorite Mortal Kombat, cause the main game and its Versus mode is just so much damn fun. The main game is a co-op 3D platformer beat-em-up with cool moves and strings that let you do some pretty insane combos. And the Versus mode replicates that perfectly in the best way possible, because it means that all the jank wackiness you can do to a random ogre can also be done to your unexpected friend. But seriously, this game just feels super good and lets you do so much dumb fun stuff, and playing these familiar characters against someone else in a way that's removed from the roots of the series while still being true to itself is just awesome and makes me want a game like this for all my favorite fighters. In a lot of my videos, I usually preface some games I talk about by saying that they're awesome, but they're not going to show up at the next Evo. But no, this should be at Evo. I want to see this played at the highest level in a stadium packed with fans gushing over it. I love this game. Please port it to literally anything. Please. So, those are all the games I wanted to take a look at. And trust me, I know I haven't even scratched the surface of this topic, and there are tons of more unsuspecting fighting games hidden deep in other genres. So if you have any that you'd like me to talk about in the future, let me know in the comments. But whether you're playing Street Fighter or Shadow Tower Versus mode, have fun. Thanks.